Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, she has really angered the Chinese. She has really, really angered them. And it makes sense on the one hand. Take a look at the headline from Reuters. They say Nancy Pelosi arrives in Taiwan, voicing U.S. solidarity as China fumes. Yes. So the U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi arrived in Taiwan late on Tuesday on a trip she said demonstrates American solidarity with the Chinese-claimed self-ruled island. Jesus Christ, this sentence is really a mouthful. I regret having begun it. I regret having begun it. So basically, this is important. Why? Because, of course, you have American officials visiting Taiwan. That's nothing new. You had two delegations that were there in March. It's nothing new. But she's the first House Speaker. Okay, she's the first Speaker of the House to do this in, 17 years? I think the last one was in 1997. So under the Bill Clinton administration, right? It's Newt Gingrich who went there. And that's what makes it significant. And of course, the Chinese are very, very touchy about this subject. They hate Americans, indicating too much support to Taiwan, right? Because as you guys know, of course, a few decades ago, what did the United States do? The U.S. switched recognition of what it regards as the true China to the People's Republic, okay? So the United States only has diplomatic relations with China since 40 years, something like that. And Taiwan is the only piece of land where we have an issue. Let me show you here on the map. Just very briefly, of course, to the left we have mainland China, and this strip of land here on the right, this is Taiwan. Now the Chinese, they look at Taiwan and they say this is China, right? Taiwan is part of China. It's one China. That's it. There's no China over here and a Taiwan over there. No, this is all China. And the United States also accepts, okay, all of this is China. However, the Chinese are afraid that the Americans will switch support at any second. Right, so when you have the House Speaker getting off a plane all of a sudden in Taiwan, if you're the Chinese, you're looking at each other like, what the hell is she doing here? What is she doing here? Why did you send her? Right? Are you going to change your mind now? Like, what's going on? So this is from Reuters. They say Pelosi and the rest of her delegation disembarked from a U.S. Air Force transport plane at Songshan Airport in downtown Taipei after the nighttime landing on a flight from Malaysia. So they say that this visit risks pushing U.S.-Chinese relations to a new low. She sent out a barrage of tweets, or at least her staffer did. I doubt she writes these. And said that our delegation's visit to Taiwan honors America's unwavering commitment to supporting Taiwan's vibrant democracy. What a mouthful. What a mouthful. And they say our discussions with Taiwan leadership reaffirm our support for our partner and promote our shared interests, including advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Again, what the hell does that mean? Because let's talk about the Indo-Pacific for a second. We had a few months ago, I always say a few months ago, it's almost a year, okay, it's almost a year, where the Australians and the British and the Americans, they get together and they make this new military alliance called AUKUS, right, which is aptly named after their names, Australia, UK, US. It doesn't really sound good, but that's the idea. And what do they say when they announce this thing, all three at the same time? They never mention China. They never say China's name. They say, we want to, bring peace and stability and security to the Indo-Pacific. So this is China's backyard, right? If you live on, whatever, let's pick a name, like Black Street, and your name is John, I'm not going to say, hey, I want to really kick John's ass and get him out of his house. No. I'm going to go and just, I'm going to watch over Black Street, take care of this area, just make sure everything's okay. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. They just speak in riddles, okay? All they do is speak in riddles, but it's the exact same thing. Now, of course, Kirby, yeah, that's actually his name. John Kirby, he's the spokesperson. He's the official spokesperson for the Pentagon, for the Americans. To calm things down, let's take a look at what he has to say. This is his explanation for the visit.
Assurances. We have said, and we have repeatedly said, that we oppose any unilateral changes to the status quo from either side. We have said that we do not support Taiwan independence, and we have said that we expect cross-strait differences to be resolved by peaceful means. We have communicated this.
So cross-strait differences, you know what he's talking about? He's talking about this exact line that I showed you here, where it's not the Chinese who've done this, obviously. it's the Americans in Taiwan who consider this sort of a dividing line. Like, here's Taiwan, this is our territory, and that's China, this is our territory. China doesn't care for any of this. This is nonsense to their ears. But I'm gonna let Kirby speak.
This directly to the PRC at the highest levels, including as recently as last week in the phone call between President Biden and President Xi. The National Security Advisor, the Secretaries of State and Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff have also made this very clear to Beijing in a
He's basically saying, we don't want any trouble. We've spoken to the Chinese. And there was, of course, a phone call between Biden and Xi Jinping just last week. They all spoke to each other. Despite that, let's see what's going on. Here's from Danny Haifeng. Look what he wrote on Twitter. He said that China's military, which is officially named the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, is preparing a series of countermeasures to Nancy Pelosi's trip, which will include a military operation within the following zones around Taiwan. Okay, so I'm just zooming out so you can see these little figures over here. I'm going to show you a video. This is a video that's also been released officially by the Chinese military. This is from specifically from the Eastern Theater Command. Take a look at what their response is to Nancy Pelosi. They're saying, okay, you want to send her over here? We're gonna show you this. I think you get the idea. I'm not going to play the full thing, but I wouldn't mess with them. That's just me personally, I wouldn't start anything. I want to show you something else actually from last month. This is from the Chinese defense minister. Look what he has to say about Taiwan.
敢把台湾分裂出去，中国军队必将不惜一战，不惜代价，坚决粉碎任何台独分裂图谋。 坚决维护国家主权和领土完整。
I don't think it's fair to look at it as some kind of isolated incident because the last months there's been a lot of back and forth. We had this incident where the State Department, the U.S. State Department, changed some of the wording on their website because if you go on their website, they have a sort of a tiny description about their relations with every country, right? So you go to country X and say, oh, we love country X and we've been trading with them. We have diplomatic relations since 50 gazillion years, whatever. And when you go to China, you look at their brief on China. They before it was clearly explicitly written that the United States does not support independence in Taiwan. It's like clear cut, end of story. And they changed that. And they changed that. And the Chinese, of course, are not stupid. The Chinese, they're looking at that and say, what are you doing over there? What are you doing over there? That's odd of you. Why would you change this? And then, of course, the Americans have to reassure them and say, no, we are not changing our one China policy. Again, when we talk about a one China policy, this is simply what the Americans, what is understood to be America's stance towards China, that it's just China. There's no China and Taiwan. It's just China. We respect that. Okay, now the Americans keep saying that, but then they keep doing things like this. And if I'm not mistaken, that mercenary firm, Blackwater, the one in Iraq where they massacred civilians, and they're basically guns for hire. They're mercenaries. And the biggest, most infamous firm of that is Blackwater. They changed the name. They had to rebrand it because they killed and massacred so many people. It started becoming bad for business, so they had to change the name. Any case, the head of that, the founder, Eric Prince, I believe he lives in Taiwan. Am I mistaken? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But my point is that the Americans are sort of, there are ripples in the water right now. There are many ripples in the water. And there was another delegation, Mike Pompeo, of all people. He was in Taiwan just a few months ago, right? So this was in March of 2022. Mike Pompeo headed to Taiwan with some kind of think tank that he's participating with over there. So this is again Donald Trump's former Secretary of State. And then you had another U.S. congressional delegation which went there in May of 2022. If I'm the Chinese and I'm looking at this, that doesn't look this doesn't look to one China policy to me, right? And a lot of people right now are thinking that you're going to have the same thing with what's happening in Ukraine, where basically you're going to have the United States and the mainstream media and the corporate media in the West kind of really just launching an enormous campaign to rally support behind Taiwan, just the same that they're doing right now with Ukraine, okay? And they're going to do this, they're going to use Taiwan in a bid to escalate with China, to start a war with China, to whatever it is. When we say these phrases, start a war with China, I mean, you know what that means. That's like Armageddon. It's game over. I don't want to know what is start a war with China. That's not an option. But nevertheless, we live in a crazy world, right? These people are nuts. There's no limits to the things they would do. Now, honestly, if you ask me, I think there's some truth to it. I don't know if it's completely true, but I think there's some truth to it that they're trying to rally. They're trying to put Taiwan in people's in the public consciousness a bit more, right? They're trying to rally more support behind Taiwan and make it more of an issue. And this is very bad because the Chinese, like I said, they're basically doing so well that they've lifted so many people out of poverty. Again, it's not a perfect country. They have their own issues, many issues, just like anybody else. But they've lifted so many people out of poverty, and just on a global basis, China right now, it's going to surpass the United States as the number one economy. They have the largest army. They're a nuclear armed nation. They have nuclear weapons. So the United States and the West, they're feeling inferior. They're feeling like, oh no, we're not going to be the big dog anymore. The Chinese are. Well, that's what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to let it happen. There's a lot of saber rattling going on. But that's really what it comes down to. Like, if you really want to understand this issue, this is all about being a thorn in China's side. And I want to be unequivocal. I want to be super clear with you right now. This is the most important thing that you should take away. The United States does not give a shit about Taiwan or the people in Taiwan. They want to annoy China. They want to put a thorn in China's side. And all of this is to make China afraid, to basically tell them that, hey, we have Taiwan as our ally and we can put weapons there, bases there. We can use Taiwan against you. And this is the same thing that they always do, right? They're doing the same thing, of course, with the border with Afghanistan. That's also become unstable. The Trump administration, they went and delisted this TPP. I think the abbreviation was called this Turkmenistan Islamic Party, right? It's basically a terrorist organization. You have at least 5,000 fighters in Syria. They tell you it's a civil war in Syria, but they have Uyghurs there. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but basically the Trump administration, they told China, you know what? This terrorist organization, we're going to delist them as a terrorist organization just to annoy you, just to be a thorn in your side. Issues with Hong Kong, right? They're supporting those democracy protests over there. And you have the issue with Tibet. I mean, when I say issue, these were never really issues before. The United States is only now making them issues, okay? But these are various things in the toolkit that they want to use to annoy China, to provoke China. So it's Taiwan, it's Tibet, it's Hong Kong, and it's the Uyghurs. Right? So they're exploiting these issues, pretending to care about them to provoke the Chinese. And of course, these never mattered when the United States needed the Chinese, right? When Hillary Clinton went there. You remember that? I showed you this video where Hillary Clinton is in China and she's saying, oh, we're going to be best friends and we love you and we're going to build a bond together. She just wanted money. That's what it was about. They wanted loans and stuff. So you understand this is always what happens with the US and the West. Never care about these so-called human rights issues until, they don't want you anymore, right? So this is, for example, I can give you with Bashar al-Assad, with the Syrian president. He went to the UK. He was with the Queen. Literally, he's with the Queen, and with Tony Blair, and him and Tony Blair, they're with their wives, and he's with Prince Charles. They're basically trying to win him over. They're trying to woo him. And when that didn't work, then, he's a dictator, blah, blah, blah. And with Saddam Hussein, You know, you remember Donald Rumsfeld? He got off the plane and he shook hands with Saddam Hussein, and they gave him chemical weapons to use against Iran because they needed Iraq to use against Iran. And then when they were done with that, they turned against Iraq. It's always like this. This is a pattern that you see over and over. So remember that. Keep that in mind. Again, this visit with Nancy Pelosi, it's not unique. You shouldn't look at it as you know, in a vacuum. You have to look at it in the general context of AUKUS, of China surpassing the West in everything, in its army, in its economy. It is a power, and it's on its way to becoming a superpower. There's no question about that. And they want to stop that, right? So they're using these various issues against China, and God forbid there's a military confrontation, because I think we'd all be done for. When we talk about BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So China is one of the rising economies, the expanding economies, the growing economies. And of course, we look at the pivot as well. Again, I hate that word because they use it in a bad sense, to pivot towards the East. You remember how they were saying, these U.S. officials, that we need to pivot towards China. Oh, now we're out of Afghanistan. We're done with occupying the Afghans for 20 years. Let's look at the Chinese. Let's mess with them. Let's go with AUKUS. And let's start, giving the Australians better weapons to help in our attacks against them, potential attacks. Alternatively, you have Russia, you have Iran, you have the global South. They're building bridges with the Chinese in this Belt and Road Initiative. You remember China is trying to basically, revive the Silk Road, the infamous Silk Road. The Silk Road in ancient times was a trade route all through Asia, a famous trade route that, it was the center of the economy. That's how it was, It went all the way from China to Palmyra and Syria and onwards into Europe. So China's idea is to revive that by, signing deals with countries all over the world. Cuba, Syria, Iran, you name it. And they're building a new economic framework. Once again, the West looks at that and they feel threatened. That's what it's about. It's about rivalry and them feeling insecure and irrelevant. Because in the future, I'm telling you, man, that's how it's going to be. The West is going to fade out, and it's going to be China and the rest.